Good morning or good afternoon, class. Mr. Manta here. Today's date is Monday, March 30th, 2020. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into science class. Now, I mentioned at the end of last week that we're going to have a quiz this week on all the stuff that we've been learning about light. That quiz is going to be tomorrow, Tuesday. And so today, we're going to have kind of like a review lesson slash a final lesson all about study strategies. Going through some ways that you guys can study for this quiz and just like good skills to pick up to study for all quizzes and tests that you'll have in your many years of schooling to come. So that's what we're going to focus on today. But first things first, grades and missing work. Ladies and gentlemen, I went through and graded a whole bunch of grades over the weekend, all the stuff we've been doing since we've been doing online work. I went through and graded and returned those on Google Classroom, all the completed assignments that we've had this whole time. Took a long time. It was a big pain in the butt. I did it. First of all, you're probably going to have a lot of emails telling you, hey, returned assignment, returned assignment, returned assignment, all from Mr. Manta, that you can click on. You can look at what individual grade you got on each assignment, but there's an easier way that you can see all your grades than that. Second of all, most people are doing great. Most people have completed every single assignment. They've gotten their stuff in on time. They're earning scholar dollars for it. They're on their way to enjoying a class party, which is, I think, what we're doing in both grades instead of the field trip. Most people are doing really great, and that is awesome to see. Unfortunately, there are a few of you out there who do have missing assignments still that are hurting your grades and your paychecks. There are also a few people who weren't entirely understanding the instructions on the classwork assignments still, or weren't putting in 100% effort, and I've been in contact with those people and their parents over the weekend. But, most importantly, several of you have missing assignments. You might be asking, Mr. Manta, there are so many assignments on Google Classroom, how can I tell if I'm missing something or not? Well, I'm going to explain that to you right now, because the first thing you should do today is go check those missing assignments. Here's what you got to do. First of all, this is our Google Classroom page. This is the Purdue one, but it looks the same for Georgia Tech and UT. First thing you need to make sure is that you are on the Classwork tab, and then you need to click on this button up here that says View Your Work. View Your Work. Everybody will have that button as long as you go to Science and click on the Classwork tab. When you click View Your Work, you will see a page that looks like this. It will go through all of the assignments that we've had from the most recent to the oldest, top to bottom, and it will show you the grades that you got on them. So this student, for example, is doing pretty well on each of these assignments. Even more importantly, though, is that you can come to this section over here, and there is a button that says Missing. If you click on that Missing button in the section called Your Work, then it will show you any missing assignments that you have. This student, for example, they did almost all their work, but there were a few of them that slipped by. They missed a video, or no, the videos you don't actually have to turn in, so that should be fixed by now. But they missed some independent questions, some classwork questions, and some classwork questions here. So this student, and it may or may not be you, needs to go back and fix those assignments and get those complete. Pause this video. Before we go on with the video, go and check right now if you have any missing assignments. If you do, completing those should be your priority right now. So pause the video and go check. Alright, I am now assuming that you are either returning to the video and that you have already paused and gone and checked and completed everything, or that you didn't have anything missing in the first place. So, we can go ahead and get started. We know we have a quiz tomorrow, so, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to study. But, before we just jump into studying, it's worth taking a second to pause and ask how we should study. When I worry that sometimes throughout the whole year, as I've been telling you guys, here's a study guide, study for the tests over the weekend, that people have been either not studying the right way or not really knowing how to study. And so today we're not just going to do some reviewing, we're going to talk about the right ways for you as a student in this class or any other class to do your studying. I know that mostly what a lot of students do is that, and what I did for a lot of like high school and college, was I took the notes that I had taken throughout my time in class, my notebook, and I looked through them here. But that's not a great strategy because I had written down a whole lot of stuff, and that didn't really do a good job of kind of focusing out the key ideas that like really mattered that were going to be on the test. I also knew that wasn't a very good strategy because it was really easy to get distracted, and it's like, if you just look over a page of notes, by the time you're done with it, you haven't really created anything. You're not really sure that you actually did anything at all because you're just like moving your eyes down a page. You're not actually writing anything out. And so that's really not a very good study strategy. And there's research on studying and science that shows that that's not a very good way to study. Same thing goes now that we're doing online learning. You might think, well, I'll just go back and watch all the videos. if you put all of my video lessons together, that would probably be like 3 hours long at this point. And I don't want anyone to just go back and watch another 3 hours of video. That's way too much. So either of those, like, they could help for a study strategy, but they're kind of like how Paul Rudd feels right here. They're kind of meh. Not the best study strategy. Better than nothing, but not the best study strategies. So what's better? Well, like I said, there are people who have done science and research on the science of studying, and they have agreed, for the most part, that there are two strategies that work really well that can help you all through middle school, high school, college, do way better on your tests, and not have to spend so long studying. We're going to go through those two strategies and use them today. The first strategy is quizzing yourself. Quizzing yourself meaning actually asking yourself questions and having to pull the answers out of your own brain without having them written right down there on paper. So for example, oftentimes in classes, teachers will give kind of a practice quiz or a practice assessment, and taking those ahead of time is a super helpful way for you to study, to actually have to pull the information out of your brain. You're doing the same exercise that you're going to have to do on the quiz, which is why it works so well. You could write, or you or a friend could write those questions for each other to help yourself study, but it's best when a teacher gives it to you. But in general, you want to quiz yourself. This is part of the reason that flashcards work really well. The science says flashcards are a great idea. So you can only ever really look at one side of a flashcard at a time. So if you have a question on one side, and you have to pull out of your brain whatever the answer is on the other side, then you can flip it over and check if you actually got that answer correct. So flashcards are an excellent way to quiz yourself and study for a test or a quiz. The second strategy is called You Be the Teacher, or You Pretend to Be the Teacher, either way. This involves teaching something to somebody else who doesn't actually know the material. So when I was in college and high school, a lot of kids liked to get together in the library and make these kinds of study groups. People sometimes would be worried. They'd be like, I don't know if I want to have a study group with Billy because Billy doesn't pay attention in class and he hasn't learned anything, and so it wouldn't be helpful to study with him because I would just have to explain all the material to him. Well, it turns out that would actually make Billy like the best study partner ever, because if you have to be teaching him things, that helps you study it really, really well. In fact, I can tell you that as I've been a science teacher, I've gotten to learn my science way better because I've had to know it so well that I can teach it to students. Teaching someone else is an excellent strategy for studying. You also, you don't even need other friends, though, to really do this. You can just kind of pretend to be the teacher and think about how would I teach this material to someone else if I was the teacher. So strategy 1, quiz yourself. Strategy 2, you be the teacher, are two really good ways to prepare for a test or a quiz. And those are what we're going to use today. If you use those ones, cheers to you. Paul Rudd is now very happy because you're going to do way better on that test or quiz coming up. All right. In order to do these strategies, which we're going to do with this video today, we need to have our notebooks ready. I'm going to ask you guys to take out your science notebooks and prepare for us to do these together by copying down what you're seeing on the page or on the screen in front of you. So your notes for today might look something like, having the lesson heading up there for today. You have this note about what we just talked about, that there's two good strategies to do this. And now we're going to go back through each of our lessons, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15. We're skipping over 14. It'll be okay. And for lessons, I want you to basically write out in your notes the way that I have these arranged here. So you write out lesson 9 and then leave yourself some blank space where you're going to have to write a free response answer. Write out lesson 10 and then give me numbers 1, 2, and 3 because we'll have 3 questions. Same goes for lesson 11. You need some blank space. For lesson 12, you need 1, 2, and 3. For lesson 13, you need some blank space. And for lesson 15, you need 1, 2, and 3. So before we move forward, pause this video and copy out this exact format into your notebook so that you can study along and work with me today. Pause the video, copy this down now. All right, I'm assuming that we've got that copied down now, and we're going to move along and jump right into lesson 9, where we had our introduction to light. For lesson 9, the material, we're going to use the You Be the Teacher study strategy. Here's how it's going to go. Imagine your little brother or little sister grabs you one day and says, hey, you know how you can take a flashlight and shine the light into a dark room to make it bright? If light and dark are opposites, how come there's no such thing as a flash dark that you can turn on and it shines darkness into a bright room? Write out in your notebook, in that blank space, what you would say to this little sibling using what we learned about light. Pause the video and do that in your notebooks now. Alright, we're bringing you back together. I'm assuming that you've completed that now in your notebook. I'll give you an example of what Mr. Manta's answer would sound like to this question if my little brother, little sister asked me this. I would say something like, light and dark are kind of like opposites, but not exactly. Light exists, but darkness doesn't. Darkness is just what's there when there isn't any light. Light actually exists. It's made of waves and it travels at a certain speed and you can measure it and stuff. When you turn on a flashlight, it's sending light waves into a dark room. You couldn't have a flash dark because there's no such thing as dark waves. That's my example answer. Hopefully yours sounded kind of similar. That was Lesson 9, Intro to Light. Jumping ahead to Lesson 10, we're doing the self-quizzing, quiz yourself strategy for Lesson 10. This is Lesson 10, all about lasers. First question, what are A, B, and C in this diagram? Answer that as number 1. Second question, which has a longer wavelength, a blue laser or a red laser? And third question, which has more energy, a blue laser or a red laser? Answers 1, 2, and 3 in your notebooks now. Alright, we're going to bring it back. I'm assuming that you have your answers written down in your notebook. You better, because at the end of this you might have to send me a picture of your notes, and you're going to take a long time if you have to go back and copy down all this information. So I'm assuming you have everything written down in your notebooks. I'm going to go through my answers now. First of all, in this diagram, A is a trough or a valley, B is measuring the wavelength, C is amplitude, the height of the wave, and D is a peak or a crest. For number 2, which has a longer wavelength, the red laser, red light has a longer wavelength than blue light. That's what makes one red versus one blue. And number 3, which has more energy, is the blue laser, and that's because it has a shorter wavelength. The one diagram that really summed up everything we needed to take away from Lesson 10 on lasers was this one here, which is showing the difference between red light with these long sloping wavelengths and violet light with these much shorter wavelengths, and the idea that all the other colors are somewhere in between. So we can see that blue has a shorter wavelength than red, and we also know that the shorter your wavelength is, the more energy you have. So violet has the most energy, followed by indigo, then blue, and so on. Alright, jumping ahead. We are now on Lesson 11 when we learned about white light. We're going to use the you be the teacher strategy here. Imagine you were studying with a friend, and they said, wait, so why was there a whole separate lesson on white light? Isn't white just another color like red or yellow? And what does this prism thing do? Write out in your notebooks what you would say to this friend. You be the teacher. Pause the video and write it out in your notebooks now. Alright, we're bringing it back. I'm assuming you've written this out in your notebook. I'm going to give you an example of what my answer might sound like. Here we go. Mr. Manta's answer. We had a separate lesson on white light because it's different from all the colors. The other colors each have their own wavelength, like red is a long wavelength or violet is a short wavelength. But white is what you get when you combine all the colors together. When you turn on a light bulb, it shines out red and blue and green and yellow and all the other colors of light. But it looks white to us because white is what you get when you combine them all like that. Now, a prism is a tool people use to pull white light apart into all the different colors of light. If you send a beam of white light into one side, a rainbow comes out on the other. The two diagrams we had on white light that kind of explain the whole lesson, sum them up in a quick visual, are these two. First of all, that when you turn on a light like this, a white light, which is what most light bulbs are, it's shining out all the different colors and wavelengths of light in every direction. So white light contains all of the colors within it. Second of all, we had this animation of a prism showing that white light is being beamed into one side and the prism is separating it out into each of the different colors of light with their separate wavelengths. That's what a prism does, P-R-I-S-M. Alright, jumping ahead. For Lesson 12, we're going to do some self-quizzing. So you should have numbers 1, 2, and 3 in your notebook. Here they are. Number 1, are there more wavelengths of light that we can see or that we can't see? Which one is there more of? Number 2, tell me one thing you know about infrared light and one thing you know about ultraviolet light. And number 3, how would you fill in the blanks A, B, and C on the diagram below with types of non-visible light? Pause the video and answer these numbers 1, 2, and 3 now. Alright, bringing it back. I'm assuming you've got these answers down in your notebook. I'll show you my answers now. Number 1, are there more wavelengths of light that we can or can't see? Well, there are way more wavelengths of light that we can't see. We call those non-visible light. We cannot see most of the light in the world. Most of the light is non-visible light. We can only see that narrow strip that is the colors of the rainbow. Number 2, tell me one thing you know about infrared light and one thing you know about ultraviolet. Well, we have some options here because there's a few different things we said about, oh my goodness, about each of these. First of all, infrared light has a longer wavelength than red light. It's produced by things that are hot. Some animals, like snakes, can see infrared light, and it's used by thermal cameras and night vision goggles. If you told me any one of those 4 things, you can consider your answer correct. Second of all, for ultraviolet, we learned that it has a shorter wavelength than violet light. It is produced by the sun, and it's part of sunlight. It gives some people sunburns, so sunscreen reflects ultraviolet light. And we learned that some animals, including even cats and dogs, can see it. If you said any of these 4 things about UV light, ultraviolet light, you can consider your answer correct. And the third question we had was to fill in the blanks in the diagram. I have them shown here below. A, over here on this far side of the diagram, is radio waves, the very longest kind of light. B over here was X-rays, and C over here was gamma rays, the very shortest wavelengths of light, and ones that are pretty dangerous too. This diagram was really the main takeaway from our lessons on non-visible light. We learned that all the colors of the rainbow are just this narrow little strip in the middle of visible light, and in fact most light is either longer or shorter and is invisible to us. Our eyeballs can't see most of the light that's out there. Alright, jumping right ahead to lesson 13. For this one we're going to use the you be the teacher strategy one more time. We had this lesson on color reflection, and here's the question that I wrote for you. Imagine that one day your older brother or sister or cousin says to you, "Geez, you're hogging the computer like every day now. I bet you're not even really doing school. Prove it. If you're really doing school, you should be pretty smart by now. So tell me, why is red paint red?" Write out what you would say to this older sibling. Pause the video and answer this question in your notebook now. Alright, we're bringing it back from there. Hopefully you've got a pretty convincing answer to your older sibling about why you're on the computer all day long. The answer that Mr. Manta would give might sound something like this. Anytime you're in a lit up room where there are light waves of all different colors coming out of the lights and windows, there are light waves of all different colors coming out of the lights and windows and bouncing all over the place. When those light waves hit something that's red, like red paint, most of the colors get absorbed. But since the object or paint is red, the red light reflects off of it and goes into your eyes. That's why it looks red to you. We saw a lot of diagrams in this color reflection lesson that looked kind of like this. So this is talking about an object that's blue. It's covered in blue paint and why it looks blue. We see that it's being hit with white light that contains all the different colors, but only blue is bouncing off of it, is reflecting. If you had an observer over here, they would have this blue light ray going into their eyeballs, and they would see a blue object. Alright, and finally we had lesson 15 on vision. We're going to self-quiz for this one more time. Here are your 3 questions. First of all, what are the 4 parts labeled A, B, C, and D in this eyeball diagram? 2, where does all the light that enters your eye get processed into an image? And 3, is a window transparent, translucent, or opaque? Pause the video, answer these 3 questions now. And we're bringing it back. I'm going to assume that you've now completed these questions in your diagram. Here are my answers. For number 1, I got the 4 parts labeled right here, A, B, C, and D. We had the iris, we have the pupil, which is just an empty space right there. We have the lens, and we have the retina. That's the part in back where all the information, like all the different colors, get detected. For number 2, we had where does all the light that enters your eye get processed into an image? That would be in your brain. Your eyeball sends everything it sees up to your brain, out through the optic nerve, and your brain has to actually figure out what it is that you're looking at. And third of all, is a window transparent, translucent, or opaque? It is transparent. That means that light totally passes through it. It's totally clear or totally see-through, and the word we use for that is transparent. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that was all that we needed for today. As you know, we'll have a quiz tomorrow. But you might still be wondering, well, what do I need to do to be complete for today? Because there isn't a normal classwork or exit ticket like we've had so far. So here's what you got to do to be considered complete for your work today. Either number 1, send me pictures of your notes, of all those questions that you just answered in your notebook. You can email them or have your parent email them to my email address, which is zmanta@glachicago.org. Or you only need to do one of these things. For number 2, Participate in the study group discussion on Google Classroom. This is either by asking a question or answering someone else's question. Let me show you what I'm referring to. If I get out of my PowerPoint, come over here to Google Classroom, you'll see for today under Monday, March 30th, this question that says study group. What questions do you still have? I'll read the full question. What questions do you still have or topics are you still unsure about from our unit on light? You have to, if you want to take the option to participate in this, then you can post your response to that question, either being like, here's a question I have. I don't understand white light, or I don't really understand how there's non-visible light. What does that mean? You can post a question, or if other people have been posting those questions today, you can try to answer someone else's question. I will occasionally be popping in, looking for some good answers, and trying to clarify if there seems to be anything that a lot of people are confused about all at once. So again, for today, you can either send me your notes, or you can participate in that study group discussion, asking and answering questions. You got to do one of those two things, though, to get your points and to get your dollars for the day. Today's cool thing is this YouTube channel called Vsauce. I'm a huge fan of them. They have some very interesting stuff that sometimes is science and sometimes isn't science. They have one really cool video that's going to make more sense to you guys now than it would have a week ago called What Color is a Mirror? I'll give you a spoiler. They're kind of green. You have to find out why. Go watch the video. Alright, that's all we got for today, folks. Have a good one. See you at the quiz tomorrow.